Hey friends, today I'd like to share 5 ideas that changed me for the better. Just so you know, I'll start this video with a little bit of a rant, so if you want to skip over to the 5 ideas, I will include timestamps in the description box. If you don't already know, I love consuming personal development content from YouTube, from books, and from podcasts. But lately, the majority of my YouTube recommendations include some kind of a productivity rule. The 90% rule, the 80-20 rule, the 20-20 rule, the 4% rule, the 5-second rule, all kinds of rules, and oh my goodness, how many rules do we need to be productive? See, when I hear the words rule or law, I get a little bit annoyed. As a natural rule follower, it makes me feel quite uneasy to think that there's a rule out there or a law that I'm not aware of, and so I might be breaking it. And I'm sure that these are all really helpful frameworks, but the titles make me cringe a little bit. When it comes to my personal time and my personal enrichment, I like to follow ideas that pull me in. But this type of content and this type of phrasing makes me feel like all the information is mandatory. And that added pressure makes me want to almost rebel against it. I follow enough rules as it is at work and just as a member of society that when it comes to my own personal time and my personal entertainment, I really don't want more rules pushed down on me. Anyway, rant over. Let's talk instead about content that pulls you in. Sometimes you come across information that you connect with so well that it instantly changes you and how you behave moving forward. Here are 5 things that when I truly learned and connected with, changed me for the better. The first idea is that your thoughts are not facts. Before I discovered this, I really thought that all my thoughts had meaning and that most of them were true. It had never occurred to me that I could question or even dismiss random thoughts that popped into my head. Before I discovered this idea, I had never had a reason to question my thoughts. But our thoughts are both subjective and influenced by external factors. So your thoughts can easily be distorted, exaggerated, or based on incomplete information. Let's say sometimes you think, I could never do anything right. In the moment, you might believe it, but is it true? If you really think about it, it simply cannot be true. If you made it this far in life, you're doing something right. In fact, I bet there are hundreds, if not thousands of things that you're consistently doing right. If an office mate has not said a word to you in a couple of days, you may start to think that they are mad at you or they just don't like you. That is your thought, and you may even start to believe it, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily true. Maybe this coworker is going through a breakup and hasn't felt like themselves in a few days. So no, it's not that they don't like you or they're mad at you. They may not even be thinking about you. They're just dealing with and trying to survive their own pain. Similarly, if you walk by someone eating alone at a cafe, you may think that they look so lonely. But again, this is not necessarily true. If you ever see me eating alone at a cafe, I can assure you that I'm having the time of my life. But that's because I am fortunate enough to be surrounded by people I love and I spend a lot of time with them as it is. So getting away to be by myself is a little bit of a luxury that I indulge in occasionally. The bottom line is that if a random thought pops into your head, you don't have to take it at face value because it's not necessarily true. And learning this can feel so empowering and so liberating. The second idea is that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. There's a second version of this idea that is circulating in the self-help world right now, and it's the idea of avoiding the second arrow. Here's a gist. Difficult things will happen, and while they're happening, there will likely be pain. This is simply part of life, and there's no escaping it. But we don't have to stretch out the pain by adding suffering to it. And suffering here refers to the mental and emotional anguish that we create around a painful situation. We usually create this suffering by anticipating the bad things that we think will happen, or by reliving and ruminating on bad things that have already happened. So the first arrow is the bad thing that happens to us, the painful event. And the second arrow is how we react to the first arrow or to the bad thing that happened. Avoiding the second arrow is all about not extending the suckiness of a painful event. An example I've shared before is getting my IV treatments for Crohn's disease. I actually handle these treatments pretty well, but imagine if I were someone who was terrified of needles. The reality is that I never plan on skipping my treatments. So worrying in advance about the pain or the experience of getting the infusion is not going to change the outcome. I'm still going in to get the treatment. On the day of the treatment, the part where the IV gets placed may not last more than 30 seconds. Even though that experience is not particularly fun, it doesn't last very long. If I start worrying about the infusion 24 hours in advance and I develop anxiety about going in and getting this done, I extend the suffering by an extra 24 hours. If after the infusion I go and tell all my friends how difficult it was and how sucky and how much I dreaded it, I can also extend the suffering past the event for several hours. So my options are to feel mild pain for 30 seconds or suffer for 24 plus hours. This obviously is a very simple example. I'm sure there are levels of pain and suffering, but understanding that you have the power to reduce the amount of suffering you experience can make a world of difference. The third idea is the sunk cost fallacy. It's also described as throwing good money after bad, but this applies to more than just money. We have a tendency to hold on to old behaviors, strategies, or even relationships because of how much we had already invested in them. Not because of the real potential that they have or the value that they're bringing today or could bring tomorrow, but because we can't quite let go of the efforts and investments we made in the past. More often than not, if we didn't have any history with these items or even people, if we could start fresh today knowing what we know, we would not choose to add those things or these people into our lives now. And that's how we trick ourselves into holding on to things that no longer serve us. But the truth is that your initial investment of time, energy, or even money is gone, and you are not likely to get any refunds on what you've invested. And by sticking with these older choices that didn't pan out in the past and are no longer serving you today, you just end up wasting more of your precious resources. And that makes it even harder to let go in the future. The next idea is closely related to the sunk cost fallacy and is this idea of giving yourself 5 fails a day. I made a video about the power of fresh starts. I'll link it in the description box and probably somewhere on the screen. It's one of my really early videos, so I cringe when I watch it, but the message is on point. So you should check it out. I have been enjoying the idea of fresh starts for a while now, but more recently, I came across this method that is attributed to the CEO of Essence, Caroline Wanga. I hope I'm saying her name right. And her idea is to give yourself 5 fails before you write off the entire day. And I think that is a powerful strategy to prevent self-sabotage. She is basically raising her threshold for failure. And that means she doesn't give up just because one thing went wrong. And I love this idea because it allows us to bounce back so much faster and keep going. I may have been late to the party, but I heard her say this on an Instagram reel. I'm sure it was a TikTok at some point, but I don't have TikTok. I'm an elder millennial, so I wait until things go to Instagram to see them there. Nevertheless, this idea is just fabulous. The fifth idea is the power of the word yet. I am sure this is something I had heard before, but it probably went into one ear and out the other. It only really sunk in when my daughter was watching a kids show called Gabby's Dollhouse. If you don't have kids, this show has really cute feline characters who have a habit of adding the word yet at the end of what would be negative statements. And the idea is to encourage kids to keep trying and keep learning so they can become better at things. So they would say things like, I can't do this yet. I'm not good at this yet. I don't know how to do this yet. This doesn't work yet. And so forth. I'm sure you get the idea. The beauty of adding the word yet is that it shifts our perspective from a perceived absolute limitation to the possibility of growth. It helps us go from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Saying yet means that things will likely get better if we keep practicing, if we keep trying, if we keep learning. And I think that's a really empowering way to look at things. Anything new we pursue requires a learning curve, and we'll never know what we're truly capable of if we quit too early. And once we figure out that no one else is just naturally gifted at everything, once we realize that most things can be learned, it opens up a world of possibilities for us. These 5 ideas really changed the course of my life when I came across them, and I hope they will be transformative for you too. I'm always open to learning new bits of wisdom, so please share any transformative ideas you have come across that have changed you for the better. Leave a comment below if you are open to sharing your ideas with others. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.